What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. Today is the first official video of the 2022 year on my channel, and today we'll be taking a look at the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series driver lineup. We'll be taking a look at the full-time drivers and the part-time drivers for 2022 that have already been confirmed, and some potential ones that could get confirmed for 2022. So let's go ahead and just jump into it. Starting off, we're going to take a look at the one car for Trackhouse Racing. This one we already know who the driver is going to be. This is going to be where Ross Chastain will be driving in 2022. Ross Chastain is moving away from Chip Ganassi Racing and moving into the Trackhouse Racing for a second car as Trackhouse Racing expands, and he'll be working with Phil Surgeon in 2022. Ross Chastain's 2021 season was actually pretty decent. He finished in the top 20 in points, and at points was contending for victories. He was up there up the front of points. I remember tracks like the Southern 500 where he finished in the top 5, and when he finished second at the National Race Course, it was fuel mileage to help him get up there, but he finished second at Nashville. So Ross Chastain will be looking for his first career NASCAR Cup Series victory in 2022, and hopefully with the help from Phil Surgeon working them in 2022, hopefully that chemistry can continue to work together and will help Ross Chastain in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the two-car for Team Penske. Cindric will be driving this car in 2022. He'll have Discount Tire and Menards and a couple other sponsors that'll be working with them in 2022. He also basically have Jeremy Bullins as a crew chief for him in 2022, and I believe that Doug Campbell is also going to be a spotter in 2022 as well. Cindric, of course, 2020 NASCAR Xfinity Series champion and almost won the 2021 NASCAR Xfinity Series championship, where unfortunately he got beaten in a photo finish against Daniel Hemrick. Cindric, honestly, in my opinion, could be a driver that has an insane rookie season in the NASCAR Cup Series. And a lot of that does come from the road course type of racing. Cindric is already one of the top 2 or 3 drivers in Xfinity last year when it came to road courses. And when he ran in the Grey Cup races and road courses especially, he did extremely well. So I think that Cindric has a very strong chance and a very strong possibility of having a great rookie year. He could be the best rookie we've seen in many, many years, potentially since maybe like Jimmy Johnson in 2002. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. I think he's going to win races in 2022. I think he for sure at least gets one, but he might be able to win more races in 2022. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. But he'll be moving to the 2-car in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 3-car for Richard Childress Racing. Austin Dillon will be driving a 3-car for Richard Childress Racing in 2022. And I believe he'll also have the same crew chief and the same spotter that have been working for the last couple of years, working with him in 2022. Austin Dillon's 2021 season was honestly pretty decent in my opinion. Unfortunately, he did not make the playoffs. However, he would have made the playoffs had we not had the win in your in system, and a couple drivers like Michael McDowell and I think Aric Almirola as well would not have gotten in, and he would have been able to make the playoffs in 2021. Austin Dillon is a driver, in my opinion, who over the years has gotten a lot better. And I think especially how good RCR has been, especially during the testing, how long they've had these cars, I think Austin Dillon could impress in 2022. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but I think Austin Dillon has a good shot to do great in the 3-car in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 4-car for Stewart-Haas Racing. This one we already knew, and no surprise, Kevin Harvick will continue driving his car for at least a couple years in starting in 2022, and has a contract with the team right now through 2023. Kevin Harvick, in my opinion, probably still had one of the most quietest years in 2021. This is due to the fact that Stewart-Haas Racing really struggled in 2021. Despite that, Kevin Harvick still had a top 5, arguably top 5 driver season in 2022, where he would have finished top 5 in the points, had one of the best averages, and nearly won a couple races, even with how bad SHR was in 2021. He still had a pretty solid year in 2021. And I think that Kevin Harvick 2022 has a very strong chance of bouncing back, because I think especially if talent mattering a lot more, how good of a driver Kevin Harvick is, plus how much he's been a big fan of the 670 horsepower package and the 4-inch spoiler, I think that it's going to benefit a driver like Kevin Harvick, who's driven cars similar to this, and I think that Kevin Harvick will have a very strong year in 2022. I think he's a driver to watch out for, to have a big comeback year in 2022, and I think he wins races in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 5-car for Hendrick Motorsports. This being driven by defending NASCAR Cup Series champion Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson, we know, had an insane year, not just on the NASCAR track, where he got 10 victories in 2022, including, like I said, winning the NASCAR Cup Series championship and winning the Coke 600 and the All-Star Race, among other tracks. But he also won multiple other big crown jewel events, won the Chili Bowl Nationals, won the Knoxville Nationals, won the Prairie Dirt Classic, won the Kings Royal, also won the BC 39 Nationals, won pretty much every major event that you could win on dirt, every major event in NASCAR. And I do think in 2022, Kyle Larson, he once again will be working with Cliff Daniels, among other people, like Tyler Mott as well. I think that he is someone that really, I think, is going to have another strong season, considering that the second year for drivers at Hendrick Motorsports, they've only gotten better. So I think Kyle Larson is arguably the favorite and already my championship pick for 2022, just because of the fact that Kyle Larson, I think, with how good the next-gen car is really going to matter when it comes to talent. I think Kyle Larson's going to do a lot of great things, and I think he'll do really, really good driving that 5 car in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 6 car for RFK Racing. Brad Keselowski is going to be moving away from Team Penske's number 2 car, and he's going to be officially moving in to RFK Racing in 2022, driving the 6 car, and he'll be basically a co-owner / driver of his organization. Brad Keselowski over time will have much more equity into the company. He's getting a very, very small share of the ownership, but over the years, he's going to have a bigger say in what happens in the company, and he had already his first big thing where he will have ownership into the company. I think Brad Keselowski is someone to really, really watch out for in 2022 because I think Roush is a team that was slowly starting to trickle up. They got ownership from LeBron James in 2021, albeit that, of course, was the Fenway Group, but they got LeBron James in the Fenway Group in 2021, and Jimmy Fenning came back to the engineering role side of things for the RFK organization. And I think Brad Keselowski is someone who, of course, will also next year be working with Matt McCall, who was a former crew chief for Kurt Busch, and also be working with TJ Matters in 2022. I think that this pairing is going to gel very, very well in 2022. I'm very excited to see what they can do, and hopefully they will do good enough to help him have a really strong year in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 7 car for Spire Motorsports. Corey LaJoie will be continuing to drive this car in 2022. Now, the start of 2021 for Corey LaJoie was very, very quiet. It was a little bit of a down year because of a lot of mechanical problems. But as the year progressed, this 17 really started to slowly emerge. They were tending a lot more for top 10s and top 15s. They ran really strong at Daytona, and they were actually in the top 10 a lot of the race in the Southern 500. And I think they got 1 or 2 top 10s in 2021, and they led quite a few laps in 2021 as well. I know for the most part, it was a disappointing year for the team. However, I do think with the next-gen car, I think it's, especially for a driver, I think it's one of the most underrated drivers in the Cup Series right now. I think he's going to gel very, very well. He'll be working with the same pairing that he's had for the last couple years. And I do think in 2022, we're going to see Corey LaJoie do very, very well. And I think that he is someone that everyone needs to keep your eye on the radar. I think he could have a pretty strong year in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 8 car for Richard Childress Racing. This one we already know, Tyler Reddick is going to be continuing to drive this car in 2022. Tyler Reddick had a really, really solid year in 2021. Of course, working with the same pairings he's had over the last 2 years in the NASCAR Cup Series. But he started off the year a little bit slow in 2021. But as the year progressed, Tyler Reddick became an overall better driver in the NASCAR Cup Series and really started to gel, especially at the end of the year. And I know through the testing so far, he's had some issues. However, I think that Tyler Reddick could have a big breakout year in 2022, and he's one driver that I'm really keeping my eyes on in 2022, just because of the fact that the next-gen car mattering with talent and how much talent Tyler Reddick has, of course, being the 2020, 2019, and 2018 NASCAR Cup Series, NASCAR Xfinity Series Championships, excuse me. I think that Tyler Reddick is someone that I think is going to really, really gel in 2022. I think he's going to do really, really great. I'm keeping my eyes on Tyler Reddick, so I think he's going to do really strong with the next-gen car. Would not surprise me if he gets a few victories in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 9 car for Hendrick Motorsports. Chase Elliott will be continuing to drive the 9 car for Hendrick Motorsports in 2022. Now, currently, his contract only right now goes through 2022. However, there's a lot of talk behind the scenes that there's a big contract in the stakes that is being worked on for Chase Elliott for the next couple years, and he'll be with the team pretty much for the rest of his NASCAR Cup Series career. Of course, 2020 NASCAR Cup Series champion. I think that Chase Elliott is someone that also could really, really gel next year in 2022. 2021 for Chase Elliott, he only scored 2 victories in 2021, but he was actually able to back it up and make the Final Four in 2021. Now, I think very similar to what 2021, I don't think Chase Elliott is going to have a ton of major winning seasons just because of how good of Hendrick is. I really think that Chase Elliott probably have at least like a 3 to 4 win season in 2022, but that's about it. But I think Chase Elliott is going to do really good in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about 10 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. Aric Almirola will continue driving his car in 2022, of course, with Smithfield backing. He'll also work with his same pairing. I think that's Mike Bubba Radjic and also Joel Edmonds he'll be working with in 2022 as well. There have been a lot of concern that Aric Almirola was not going to return to his team in 2022, but basically at this point, we have pretty much known at this point that he is going to be returning to the team in 2022. As if he was not going to return to the team in 2022, we would have known by now if he wasn't going to be returning. I think Aric Almirola, let's be for real, Aric Almirola 2021, he absolutely struggled. So going into 2022, he's really going to need to have a bounce back year. And I don't think he's going to absolutely bounce back to where he was in 2020, especially during the summer months. But I do think that Aric Almirola in 2022 could have a very decent season, being a top 20 driver. I think he's got a lot of potential to do that, a lot to give. And I think that Aric Almirola will have a pretty solid year in 2022. I think he has a bounce back year in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 11 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. Denny Hamlin signed a contract extension in early 2021 and will be continuing to drive this team pretty much for the rest of his career, with FedEx basically sponsoring for most of the season, but not every single race. He kind of lost that full season FedEx sponsorship besides the Southern 500. Basically lost that full season sponsorship with FedEx after 2020. But Denny Hamlin will continue driving this 11 car in 2022. Denny Hamlin only scored 2 victories in 2021, but was able to make the Final Four and was arguably the only driver throughout the year that really could keep up with Kyle Larson because he was so consistent throughout the 2021 season. And in 2022, he'll be looking to still win his first ever NASCAR Cup Series championship. Surely at some point he's going to win that first NASCAR Cup Series championship, right? Because at some point, because again, he's running out of time. He's getting the later stages of his career. But I think Denny Hamlin has a really strong shot of contending for the championship in 2022. And I think he's going to do a lot in 2022. Keep an eye on Denny Hamlin to see what he can do if he can finally pick up that first ever NASCAR Cup Series championship in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 12th car for Team Penske This has already been confirmed. Ryan Blaney will be driving with this 12th car at least for the next 2 seasons in the number 12 car. However, he's going to have a new crew chief in 2022, as Jonathan Hassler was a crew chief for Wood Brothers in 2021. We'll be moving away from Wood Brothers and we'll be moving into the 12th car for Team Penske, as Todd Gordon is going to be retiring and will basically be going into retirement and is not, as of right now, planning to return to the NASCAR Cup Series or to NASCAR at this given moment. I think Ryan Blaney is someone that I think could have another really, really big breakout year. Ryan Blaney had his biggest year of his NASCAR Cup Series career, where he picked up 3 victories and was able to make it to the round of 8. Ryan Blaney needs at some point to really start doing more than just getting easy victories, not easy victories, but getting victories that only have maybe 2 or 3% of the race where he leads. I want to see Ryan Blaney start having more dominating races where he leads a lot more laps. If he can do that, that'll be very, very impressive to me. But I think that's one of his goals for him. He's also looking for his first ever NASCAR Cup Series championship, and I think he's probably become the leader of the Team Penske group. So keep an eye on Ryan Blaney, because I think Ryan Blaney could have a big year in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 13 car for MBM Motorsports. While we basically have no confirmation on this, I do think the MBM Motorsports is going to enter a second car at points in 2022, but I do not think it'll be on a full-time basis due to the shorter supply of the next-gen chassis. But I think that there will be 2 drivers at points that will get into this car in 2022. Garrett Smithley, I think, is going to get in this car. I've been really, really hard on this one, thinking that I think Garrett Smithley will get into this 13 car in 2022, at least for the Daytona 500, and maybe 1 or 2 other races in 2022. And I think that Davis Starr is going to make more Cup Series starts in 2022 as well, unless he decides to retire. I think Davis Starr is potentially going to make at least a few more Cup Series starts in 2022 as well with the MBM group. He's driven for MBM Motorsports for the last couple of years, and I think that is what's going to happen in 2022 with this 13 car for MBM Motorsports. Up next, we're going to talk about the 14 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. Chase Briscoe will be continuing to drive this 14 car in 2022 as he begins his sophomore season. Chase Briscoe's rookie season was absolutely kind of a disappointing year, but again, SHR really did not have a good year in 2021. So Chase Briscoe will be looking to bounce back in 2022, and he also has a major sponsor that was just announced a few weeks ago, called Hendrick Tractors, who actually used to sponsor Robert Richardson Jr. in the NASCAR Xfinity Series back in the day. So I think that Chase Briscoe is someone we really need to keep our eyes on in 2022 to potentially have a big breakout year. And I think with the next-gen car, with talent mattering a lot more of how good Chase Briscoe is as a driver when it comes to talent, I think Chase Briscoe is really going to gel in 2022. I think he will at least get 1 win in 2022, and I think he's going to have a big year next year. Up next, we're going to talk about the 15 car for Ware Racing. This one we already know that the car is going to be there. We just don't know at this moment who the driver is going to be. Right now, there are potentially a few drivers that could end up being this. Of course, you have J.J. Yeley, who could honestly end up being this 15 car in 2022. You also, of course, have Garrett Smithley, who could be in this 15 car in 2022. However, I think that the driver of the 15 is going to be James Davison. I originally thought it was going to be Josh Bilicki, but we'll talk about Josh Bilicki here in the latter portion of this episode. But I think it's going to be James Davison. I really want to see how James Davison can do with a car that is a little bit better, because remember, Ware Racing is getting upgrades in 2022 as they're getting into an alliance with Roush Yates engines, and of course, they're also getting an alliance with Stewart-Haas Racing in 2022 as well. So I want to see what James Davison can do. I think James Davison is a very, very talented driver. He's done really well with really, really good equipment, and I want to see how he can do in the Cup Series with much more improved equipment. So that's who I think will be in the 15 car in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 16 car for Kaulig Racing. This one will be a rotation of 3 drivers for 2022. Noah Gragson will drive for 14 races in the 16 car in 2022. And then the last 24 races, the other 24, are going to be a split between AJ Allmendinger and Daniel Hemrick. This 16 car is basically the one that won in 2021 at Indianapolis Road Course. And you have 3 of the final 4 NASCAR Xfinity Series drivers who will be getting into this car in 2022. My speculation is that AJ is going to run all the road course races in 2022, and I think that Daniel Hemrick is going to run the Daytona 500. I think that Noah Gragson will run 3 super speed races with this team as well, unless he decides to run a 6-2 for all 4 of those races, but I think that someone else is going to get into it. That might surprise me when we get to that here later in the episode. But these will be the drivers that are driving the 16 car in 2022. I think it's going to be a big year for the 16 car. Don't be surprised if they contend or even win in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 17 car for RFK Racing. Chris Buescher will be back in a 17 car for at least another couple years as we drive in a 17 car once again in 2022. He also will have Scott Graves, who will be working with him in 2022. And I also believe Mike Herman Jr. will also potentially be the spotter for him in 2022 as well. Chris Buescher is, I think, a driver that really, especially once Scott Graves got into being the crew chief for him, he really started gelling and really started to improve a lot more as a NASCAR Cup Series driver. Of course, he is a driver that won the NASCAR Xfinity Series Championship in 2015, and of course, guess who he worked with? Scott Graves. So I think that this pairing and the combination together, I think is going to be a massive, massive benefit overall for the organization in 2022, and especially if having Brad Saucy coming over to this team in 2022, I think he's going to do exceptionally well, do really, really great, and I'm really, really intrigued to see how Chris Buescher is going to do in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This we already know, Kyle Busch will be at least driving for Joe Gibbs Racing at least for the 2023 season. There have been talk that maybe 2022 was his last year, but then it was confirmed. But with the big sponsorship with South, we'll just talk about in a second, that he will be at least with his team through 2023. However, he will not have M&M's as a sponsor after 2022, as M&M's his major sponsor that's been sponsoring him since the beginning of his time in the NASCAR Cup Series with at least Joe Gibbs Racing, and Powell M&M's has been around in Mars. Mars is leaving NASCAR after 2022. And I'll talk a little more Kyle Busch here. Kyle Busch, I think in 2022 is a driver that I think is really going to gel. Now, we don't know who the crew chief and the spotter are going to be. Most likely Tony Hirschman and Ben Bayshore are still going to continue working with Kyle Busch in 2022. But I think that Kyle Busch is really going to do a lot better in 2022. I think especially with one practice qualifying coming back in 2022, plus the facts as well that really, really helps is the fact that, of course, the new car, next-gen car, where I think talent matters a lot more, and I think the drivers have been generally happy. So I think Kyle Busch is a driver that could have a big year in 2022, and I think he does great things in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. Mark Truex Jr. will at least continue driving this 19 car in 2022. It's unclear after 2022 if we return to the team in 2023, or if this will be the last year he's in the 19 car in his NASCAR Cup Series car for moving on to another organization. He will continue working with James Small, and will also continue working with Drew Herring in 2022 as well. Mark Truex Jr. in 2021 had a pretty solid year, scoring 4 victories, all, of course, on the shorter tracks, winning 750 horsepower package races, and nearly winning the championship in 2021 as well. Mark Truex Jr., in my opinion, I do think, however, in 2022, he is going to fall off a little bit. I think he's going to go from a driver that was a championship threat to having a really solid year with at least a couple victories in 2022, but I don't think other than a few victories in 2022, I think that he's going to make the round of 8 as well. But I think that Mark Truex Jr. 2022 is going to start to fall off. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I don't think Mark Truex Jr. performs as well in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. Christopher Bell will be continuing to drive this car for Joe Gibbs Racing in 2022. As of right now, his contract is unknown. I do believe this is the last year, at least as of right now, on his contract, on his Joe Gibbs Racing contract. So it's potential that after 2022 that he may be leaving Joe Gibbs Racing. However, I do think that he will continue driving for Joe Gibbs Racing pretty much for the rest of his NASCAR Cup Series career. Christopher Bell had a pretty solid sophomore year. He made it to the round of 12 in the NASCAR Cup Series Plus and got his first career NASCAR Cup Series victory at the Daytona Road Course, albeit it was a lot of help thanks to Chase Elliott and a couple other guys that were big contenders in that race having major problems that could have contended with Christopher Bell for that victory. Christopher Bell got a little bit of a lucky win because Chase Elliott did have some issues, but I digress. Anyhow, I think that Christopher Bell is someone that I really think is going to do great with the next-gen car in 2022. I think he's going to do wonders. I think Christopher Bell is a very talented driver, and I think he's really about to hit the peak of his NASCAR career. He, of course, the NASCAR Truck Series champion and nearly winning the NASCAR Xfinity Series championship. I think that Christopher Bell in 2022 is really going to gel and excel in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 21 car for Wood Brothers Racing. This one we already know. Harrison Burton will be jumping up into Cup Series to be a rookie in 2022 at the Wood Brothers. Of course, it makes a lot of sense. He's got Dex Imaging, which has been a Team Penske brand for many years. And of course, we have a new crew chief as well as Brian Wilson, who worked in the Team Penske Xfinity Series program. He'll be jumping up to the NASCAR Cup Series to crew chief for him in 2022. I think Harrison Burton may surprise. I think Harrison Burton is going to have a little bit of a quiet year in 2022. But this is a year to learn stuff, considering it is a year of changes and stuff. It's not the end of the world. Plus, Jeff Burton also helped him get into the team in 2022, which I think Jeff Burton will probably play a big factor and being a mentor for him in 2022 in the NASCAR Cup Series. So I really think that Harrison Burton could surprise a lot of people, but honestly, I don't think Harrison Burton is going to be a championship threat or be a top 15 threat throughout the year. I don't even think he makes the playoffs in 2022. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. We're going to see Harrison Burton in the 21 car in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 22 car for Team Penske. This one we already know. Joey Logano will be driving his 22 car at least through the 2023 season before his contract ends. I do think that he'll probably end up getting extended. Joey Logano only got one win in 2021, and that came at the Bristol Dirt, the race that was basically a crapshoot. Other than that, in 2021, he kind of was quiet throughout the year, was consistent, but was really quiet and did not really have winning pace throughout the year. And unfortunately, I kind of expect that same thing from Joey Logano in 2022. Even though I think talent's going to matter a lot more, I do think that Joey Logano is only going to get 1 or 2 victories in 2022. I just think right now Joey Logano kind of had major peaks, even though I still think he's right now at the peak of his NASCAR Cup Series career and still has potential to get it done long-term down the road. So I'm really intrigued to see how Joey Logano is going to do in 2022, but we'll see him in this car in 2022, and hopefully he'll do great. Up next, we're going to talk about the 23 car for 23XI Racing. Bubba Wallace, of course, no surprise, will continue driving this 23 car in 2022. He'll continue having basically all the same sponsors he's had throughout the years with the addition of Weeze working him in 2022. And he's also going to be working once again with Booty Barker, who really helped him pick up his first career NASCAR Cup Series victory earlier in the year at Talladega when we had all the winners of that weekend, when basically winning all at the same track for the first time, like I think ever, all 3 drivers winning their first career races at the same track pretty much on the same weekend. On top of that, he's also going to have the same spotter, Freddie Kraft, in 2022. I think Bubba Wallace is one to keep your eyes on because, again, he's going to be getting a driver that we'll be talking about in a second to work with them. That veteran presence, I think, is going to matter a ton to Bubba Wallace. And I think that Bubba Wallace in 2022 is going to be a driver that I think could really excel, especially if the basically 23XI having a year under their belts and how much they were slowly improving in 2021, plus the fact they got that first career victory. That really gives Bubba Wallace an extra boost of confidence to really help him in 2022. So I think Bubba Wallace is going to have a pretty solid year in 2022 with 23XI, and good luck to him in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 24 car for Hendrick Motorsports. William Byron will be in his 24 car once again in 2022, even though the contracts have not been finalized. As of right now, I think that we're going to see William Byron in this 24 car at least through the 2026 season. I think he's going to be with the team at least for another 5 years with Liberty University extending their sponsorship, albeit that's a controversial sponsor, but Liberty University will continue sponsoring William Byron at least for the 2026 season. William Byron, in my opinion, is a driver that really kind of had a pretty big year in 2021, where he had, I think, what was it? I think a 10 or 11 race streak where he had top 10 straight finishes. He had just insane amount of top 10 streaks and really had one of the best average finishes. I think he had the best average finish of anybody in the NASCAR Cup Series field in 2021. And he's also going to have a new spotter as well to help him out with that, Brendan Lyons from the 37 team in 2022. But I think William Byron will get at least 2 victories in 2022 and will be an outside threat to win the championship. So good luck to William Byron. I think he has a pretty solid year in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 27 car for Team Hezeberg or Team Hezeberg. This is a team that's going to be a part-time team in 2022. It is possible they're going to run the Daytona 500. However, I'm not entirely sure if they are going to run the 500, but they are planning to run the road courses and some short track races in 2022. And there'll be 2 drivers who will be driving for this team in 2022. They're going to have Larice Hasemans, and then they're going to have Jacques Villeneuve driving this car as well. That's right, Jacques Villeneuve is making his turn to the NASCAR Cup Series for the first time, I believe, since 2010 or 2014. It's been quite a few years since Jacques Villeneuve has even raced in NASCAR, but he has been racing, of course, in the NASCAR Euro Series over there in Europe. He's been driving, I think, for this organization, associated with this organization, and then this team, I think, is a team that we'll have to wait and see how they're going to do in 2022, but I'm very intrigued to see what number of races they eventually end up doing in 2022. So good luck to this team in 2022. They're going to be a new team, and they're also going to have backing from the Rayum organization in 2022 as well. So that's something that I think will really help them, and this is basically the team that was going to have that truck partnership. So good luck to them in 2022. I think they have a big year. Could have potentially a big year for a small team in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 31 car for Kaulig Racing. Justin Haley has been basically announced for a while that he was going to be in this 31 car for 2022. It just took a little while to know what number he was going to run for 2022. We thought he was going to be basically running the 16 car, but now we know he's going to be in the 31 car in 2022. I think that Justin Haley is a driver that could be very, very surprisingly quiet because he had a pretty decent year in the Cup Series, albeit it wasn't the second Spire Motorsports car, which isn't really a great team. They weren't a team that had a full-focus Cup driver or full-focus driver. So them putting focus on just one driver that could have been really, really big benefactor to help them out. But I think that Justin Haley, especially on super speedways, I think he's going to be a big, big threat in 2022. I just think that he's a driver that's been extremely kind of quiet on these super speedways. He's been really good, and not to mention, his only career NASCAR Cup Series victory has come at a super speedway. And I think that Kaulig Racing is putting a lot of factors into Justin Haley and that other car in 2022. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in 2022. We'll also have Brett Griffin who'll be working with them in 2022. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but I think Justin Haley could be a slightly surprising contender in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 34 car for Front Row Motorsports. This one we already know Michael McDowell will continue driving the 34 car in 2022. Michael McDowell, in my honest and sincere opinion, is a driver that had a pretty solid year in 2021. And I think it's only going to get better. Of course, coming off of winning the Daytona 500 in 2021 and making the NASCAR Cup Series Playoffs in 2021. But Michael McDowell, in my honest opinion, unfortunately, he's not going to have Drew Blickenserfer next year, as Drew Blickenserfer is going to be going into retirement from full-time competition as a crew chief in this upcoming season. But I think that Michael McDowell as a driver is going to surprise a lot of people throughout this year. I think especially with the next-gen car, I think he could have a very, very big year and a very surprisingly good year. So I think that Michael McDowell, of course, that really is also going to depend on crew chiefs for 2022, which crew chief he ends up getting. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to his crew chief is, but I think Michael McDowell could have a big year in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 38 car for Front Row Motorsports. Todd Gilliland will be jumping all the way up from the NASCAR Camp World Truck Series and will be jumping up to the 38 car for Front Row Motorsports in 2022. I don't remember who his crew chief is going to be or his spotter is going to be for 2022, but he's going into the 38 car, which has had a lot of different drivers drive over the last few years. He's the 4th different driver in the last 4 years. Of course, Todd Gilliland, basically being the son of David Gilliland, who's had association with Front Row Motorsports, plus the Front Row Motorsports Truck Series team has gotten their stuff from DJR Racing, and as well, he's, of course, the son of David Gilliland, who's been associated with the team for many, many years. Todd Gilliland, I think, is a very, very talented driver. I'm not entirely sure if they're rushing up too quickly. I do think maybe a year in Xfinity could have been a major, major asset and a major benefactor to really help him out. But I think Todd Gilliland is a very, very good driver who could have a pretty solid year as a rookie, though. And I think he'll have better year than Anthony Alfredo for sure. And he'll be competing for the Rookie of the Year honors along with Harrison Burton and, of course, Austin Cindric in 2022. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but good luck to Todd Gilliland in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 41 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. Cole Custer will continue driving this 41 car in 2022, with, of course, Mike Shiplet working with him as a crew chief for the team in 2022. I think Cole Custer has been kind of disappointing in the few years in the NASCAR Cup Series. But, of course, practice qualifying has not been there. And I think him having that lack of practice qualifying, I think, unfortunately, has hurt him so far in his short NASCAR Cup Series career. Because in the final race of the 2021 year, he was actually really, really impressive and was actually pretty good, where he was able to qualify in the top 10 and finish in the top 10 in 2021 in the season finale. But, unfortunately, really didn't get to know that just because of the fact that Cole Custer basically was not a Championship 4 member, but he qualified extremely well. And I think with practice qualifying coming back in 2022, I think he could be someone that has a pretty decent year. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to Cole Custer in 2022, but he's going to continue driving this 41 car in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 42 car for Petty GMS Motorsports. This one we already know. This is going to be a 2-car team in 2022. This originally was the GMS 94 car, but it switched over to the 42 car, and Ty Dillon will be the driver of his 42 car in 2022, with Jeremy Donnelly being the crew chief for him in 2022, which is basically a former Chip Ganassi engineer, worked in the 42 Chip Ganassi racing car, and now he's going to the 42 Petty GMS Motorsports car in 2022. Ty Dillon definitely is a very, very interesting choice in my honest opinion. He was not the first person that I originally thought would have been chosen, but I think Ty Dillon could have a pretty quietly decent year. Of course, this team's also going to be getting this team will also be getting some help from the RCR camp as well. But I think Ty Dillon could have a very quiet year. 2021, he didn't run every single weekend. He didn't have a full team sponsor. He did run for Joe Gibbs Racing for a few races, but those runs did not go extremely well. But I do think in 2022 that Ty Dillon could surprise a lot of people, and I think he could really, really help out the team in their development grow in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 43 car for Petty GMS Motorsports. Aric Jones will be back in this 43 car in 2022, but there are some changes in 2022 as he's going to have a new crew chief in 2022. Instead of having Jerry Baxter, who's been crew chief for him in 2021, who's been in this 43 car for the last couple years, we're going to see a new crew chief because Jerry Baxter is going to be going back to DJR Racing to be a crew chief for Tanner Gray in 2022. We're going to see former Junior Motorsports crew chief, Dave Ellens, who crew chief for Noah Gragson for the last couple of years, and his crew chief for that 9 car for Junior Motorsports. He'll be going up to work with Aric Jones in 2022. Aric Jones is a driver that I think is very, very talented. It's kind of unfortunate, the story of what happened to Aric Jones. Unfortunately, they had a really, really bad decision, or kind of a tough decision in regards, do we choose our current driver in the 20 car, or do we go with Christopher Bell? They got put into a really, really bad box with that Levine family racing situation after 2020. But I think Aric Jones was getting good in the end, especially in the year 2021, where he got 3 top 10s in the final 10 races of the season. So I think Aric Jones could have a quiet year in 2022, and I think especially with help from GMS Racing, which gets a major, major Chevy backing. Chevy will probably help this team out quite a bit, and I think Aric Jones could have a very strong year in 2022, but we're going to have to wait and see what happens. Up next, we're going to talk about the 44 car for NY Racing. Now, this is one ride I'm not entirely sure if they're even going to show up. However, it seems like every single year we kind of have to talk about this team because it seems like every year this team seems to show up. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know entirely how true this team is or not. They actually have raced in the NASCAR Cup Series in the past when they were a team, I think, called Team Extreme Racing, and then they did race in 2018 with J.J. Yeley. So it has been a couple years since NY Racing has raced in NASCAR in general. Now, I think that the likelihood of basically him and this team showing up on the track is basically less than 10%. I'm not even entirely sure that team is going to show up. But if they do show up in 2022, I think they're going to go with J.J. Yeley on a select part-time basis. I think J.J. Yeley is going to be the one they're going to choose just because J.J. Yeley has driven for the team. But I don't think they will be full-time if they show up in 2022. But we're going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. Up next, we're going to talk about the 45 car for 23XI Racing, as Kurt Busch will be getting into the extended second car for 23XI Racing in 2022. Kurt Busch is, I think, a major, major pickup and asset for the team. He's going to have Jason Jarrett as a spotter in 2022, and he's also going to be working with Billy Scott, who is a crew chief with him at Stewart-Haas Racing, where I know that Billy Scott only has 1 career Cup Series victory, but guess he won that Cup Series victory with Kurt Busch in 2018 when SHR had their very, very strong year. I think Kurt Busch is going to be a driver that I think really is going to be big. I don't think that Kurt Busch will just be like a driver who gets one win. I think he could actually be an outside championship contender because Denny Hamlin has also praised Kurt Busch, and I think with talent mattering a lot more, I think that Kurt Busch coming into this team is also going to be big as well because, of course, he's going to be working with someone that has going to be helping Bubba Wallace as a mentor. So I think that Kurt Busch is going to be a big asset to this team in 2022. I think he's going to do really, really great. Has a lot of potential to help Bubba Wallace out in 2022. And I think he'll help Bubba Wallace do great things and help 2311 become a better team in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 47 car for JTG Daugherty Racing. This one we already know Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will be back in this 47 car in 2022. Now, he's going to have the same crew chief next year, and that, of course, is Brian Patty. However, in 2022, he's going to have a new spotter in 2022 as Tab will moving away from Hendrick Motorsports, and he'll be working next year with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in 2022. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., a lot of people don't like his driving style. I know he's been at past called Ricky Stenhouse Jr., but I think really ever since he's gotten to JTG Daugherty Racing, I think he's honestly overall gotten better as a NASCAR driver. So I think that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. could be someone that has a big breakout year with the next-gen car. Could be a really surprising contender on Super Speedways, considering he's getting one of the biggest pickups, of course, with Tab Boyd in 2022. Who, of course, was there, I think, with Joey Logano in 2018 or 2017. So I think that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is going to overall be a major, major asset to this team in 2022. I think he's going to have a good year, and I think he will have a strong year with JT Daugherty in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 48 car for Hendrick Motorsports. Alex Bowman will at least be Hendrick Motorsports for the 2023 season. Alex Bowman in 2021 had basically his breakout year in 2021 where he picked up 4 victories. However, he was very inconsistent throughout the year and only made it to the round of 12. Alex Bowman is a driver that I think could really, really do good at the next-gen car, but we really, really don't know. But I think he's someone that we really need to keep our eyes on going into 2022 just because of the fact that he had a big year in 2021, and I think he could have another breakout year in 2022. He's also going to be basically showing up with a new look in 2022 as he's going away from the purple look, and he's basically going to be going to the white look on the car in 2022, and I think it looks pretty good, by the way. Not as good as the purple and black colors, but I do like the white colors on it a lot for next year. He's also going to be working next year with I think great guys again in 2022. Basically the same lineup combos that he's had for many, many years. So I think Alex Bowman will have a solid year in 2022, and I think he'll do great with Hendrick again in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 51 car for Ware Racing. Now, this one has not been officially announced for 2022. There are a few potential possibilities to get in the car. One driver, of course, that everyone keeps bringing up is Matt DiBenedetto. And, of course, you have Ryan Newman, who could get in this car in 2022. First, I'll say Matt DiBenedetto. I'm not confident Matty D is going to get in this 51 ride. I know that this car probably is pretty much sponsored, I think, again, for 2022, but I don't think Matt DiBenedetto is going to end up in this ride. Ryan Newman, same thing. I'm thinking Ryan Newman's pretty much out the window for even a really, really good ride. At this point, there are reporters that are saying that most likely Ryan Newman is pretty much done and is not coming back in any shape or form. So I think the driver of this 51 car, unless things change, I think it's going to be Cody Ware driving this 51 car. Cody Ware, of course, the son of Rick Ware, which makes a lot of sense. Family matters a lot. If you've got family connections and stuff, especially your dad is the owner of your team, it's going to make a ton of sense. And I think Cody Ware is a driver that is basically, I think, getting away from the Le Mans and right now getting away from the IndyCar. I think he wants to just focus on running in the Cup Series and maybe some Xfinity Series starts in 2022. So we'll have to wait and see in regards when it comes to that confirmation for that. But I think we're going to see Cody Ware in this 51 car. But it's possible Matt DiBenedetto or Ryan Newman could also get in this 51 car in 2022. But we're going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. Up next, we're going to talk about the 52 car for Ware Racing. Now, there is a possibility that they could be a third Ware car in 2022, but I'm going to say it's a very small possibility because as of now, they've only got 2 cars that they're showing for 2022. However, they do have enough inventory as of now to potentially run a third car for 2022 on charter. And I think that there are only 2 drivers that potentially get in this team in 2022, that being Ryan Ellis and Joey Gase. Ryan Ellis drove a one-off start at Kansas in 2021 in the fall, and Joey Gase has driven multiple starts. I'm leaning a little bit more toward Ryan just because Ryan has had a pretty solid run with this team. So I think that it's going to be that happens. I think Ryan Ellis will get in this 52 car. They do run a third car, but at this time, it's unclear if there will be a third car from this team. But I think it's possible that it could still happen for 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 62 car for Beard Motorsports. Beard Motorsports will have 4 races in 2022. Noah Gragson will at least for sure run the Daytona 500 in the 62 car. He'll have to attempt to qualify in as they are an uncharted car. He'll be attempting to make his first career NASCAR Cup Series start in this race in 2022. But as of right now, there's only one race that Noah Gragson has set for him with this team for 2022. So it is very possible that there could potentially be another driver if Noah Gragson does not run any more races. It is possible that another driver could end up getting a ride in this car. And I think that is actually exactly what's going to happen. I think that there will be another driver who gets in his car for 3 races, and my thoughts are Michael Annett. Now, a lot of you are thinking I'm a little bit nuts for thinking Michael Annett, but Michael Annett, even though he's retired from full-time racing in NASCAR, he's now ruled out the possibility of maybe making a few select starts in NASCAR in 2022, maybe making 3 or 5 starts. They mentioned this back in November, and no, we really haven't heard much since last November. But I think that Michael Annett is going to get the other starts in 2022 with Beard Motorsports. So I think we know Noah Gragson is going to attempt to qualify for the 500, and I think the other 3 races are going to be Michael Annett starts in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 66 car for MBM Motorsports. This car is 100% showing up in 2022. We're just waiting on confirmations for drivers. I believe that Timmy Hill will be in this car once again in 2022 in the NASCAR Cup Series on all the oval tracks, and will be in this car for the Daytona 500 as well. I do think that there is another driver, though, that's going to be in this car for this road course races, and that, I think, is going to be Borisset. Now, Borisset, at this time, it's not entirely been confirmed if they get sponsorship of the 66 car, which I believe that with the way that people have been reacting to the recent news about Borisset potentially coming back in 2022 to the NASCAR Cup Series. I mean, he's tested the next-gen car already, so he does have a lot of experience with this next-gen car. I think that he would be someone that they could really, really do good to have next year, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. But there are 2 drivers likely in this car next year, and it will be Timmy Hill and Borisset, who I think will be driving this 66 car in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 77 car for Spire Motorsports. While nothing is official with the 77 car for Spire Motorsports, I do believe that we do have a driver that is likely going to be in this car in 2022. It is likely going to be Josh Bilicki, who's going to be in the 77 car in 2022. We reported this a few days ago on the channel about likely now that he will be out of Ware Racing, but he's also going to have Insurance King, who will be sponsoring once again in 2022, and he'll be moving over to Spire Motorsports in 2022. While again, nothing is confirmed from the 77 team for 2022, I think that this absolutely is going to happen. Insiders are basically saying that it's likely going to happen in 2022, and I think that this overall is going to be a massive, massive pickup for the Spire Motorsports camp. I think Josh Bilicki is a driver who really can get the best out of his equipment and really knows what he's doing behind the wheel. So I think he's going to do really great once he gets over to Spire Motorsports camp in 2022. I really like Josh Bilicki a lot. It would not surprise me if he contends at points for top 10s and top 15s in the second Spire car, which of course is not as good as the other car. But I really do believe that Josh Bilicki is going to have a big year in 2022. I think he's going to do well, and I think he'll be in the 77 car in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 78 car for Live Fast Motorsports. This one we already know. BJ McLeod is basically going to run the majority of the year in the 78 in 2022. But I do expect that we'll see a few other drivers get into the 78 car in 2022. Probably guys like Scott Heckert and Kyle Tilley will probably make, and maybe even the guy who ran the Shane Golobic or someone else in the dirt team will probably get into the 78 car at some point in 2022. But BJ McLeod, of course, is going to drive for most of the year. BJ is a driver I think is really, really solid. I know that he didn't do as amazing last year, but it was a new team. And I do believe that this team actually is going to improve in 2022. I think they're going to go from a team that's kind of been around that 35th to 36th range most weeks up to around that 30th range. I think they're going to get upgraded. They're going to do better in 2022. And I think the 78 team will get better on their stats-wise in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 96 car for Gaunt Brothers Racing. Nothing is official from the Gaunt Brothers Racing camp, but they do have a next-gen chassis for 2022. But they're 50-50 right now on showing up in 2022. I do think they're going to show up and run all the short tracks and all the super speedways and all the road courses and maybe a few occasional races like a Kansas race in 2022. And I think that there are potentially 2 drivers who will get into this ride. First driver I think will get into this point some point is Parker Kligerman. Parker Kligerman actually drove the 96 car in 2021 at Kansas and ran in the top 20. So I do believe that he will do very, very good in this number 9 basically 96 car when he gets into ride. But I think majority of the races are going to be driven by the driver of the 19 for Jogas Racing Xfinity. I think that is going to be driven by Brandon Jones at points to number 96. Brandon Jones, I think, is making select Cup starts. I think it's not going to be long before we see Brandon Jones in the Cup Series, and I think this will be a stepping stone to helping him out in 2022. If they do, of course, show up, but I think that Brandon Jones is going to be in the 96 car in 2022. And finally, we're going to talk about the 99 car for Trackhouse Racing. Daniel Suarez will continue driving this number 99 car in 2022. Working, of course, with Travis Mack in 2022. And will, I think, also continue to be working with Frank Kimmel the second or third in 2022 as well. Daniel Suarez in 2021 really showed why he was a very, very talented driver. Had a pretty solid year, has some great statistics, helped the organization have a good year, even though he did finish 25th in the points. There, of course, were a lot of mechanical problems that did affect this team in 2021. But I do think in 2022, especially with getting another car in their inventory next year and probably having a bigger technical alliance with the Chevy camps and probably a big alliance with Hendrick coming next year in RCR, I do think that he's going to potentially have a big year in 2022. So I'm really excited to see what Daniel Suarez can do in 2022, and I think he'll do great in 2022. And that is everything in official confirmation of the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series driver lineup. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow my Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on pages as well. Let's go below for that and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about 2022 NASCAR Cup Series driver lineup? Let me know in the comments below, and let me know your lineups as well, what you think the lineups officially will be for 2022 as well. And basically, if anything comes back wrong, just let me know that in the comments below as well. Welcome to 2022, guys. I've got a lot of big products and a lot of content that is going to be coming out for 2022. I cannot wait to share this. At some point, the Xfinity and truck lineups are going to drop as well. I can't wait to share those with you guys soon. But anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time with some more great NASCAR and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.